10. Tiana Jones. Nobody likes waiting in a fast food drive-thru line, but the wait became so unbearable for a pregnant Florida woman one evening in 2022 that she took matters into her own hands. As 22-year-old Tiana Jones waited for her food at a McDonald's drive-thru in Lakeland, she apparently became increasingly frustrated with each passing minute. To make matters worse, when she finally received her order, there was allegedly something wrong with it. According to police, Jones stormed into the restaurant, went behind the counter, and began throwing cups and bottles, causing an estimated $100 worth of damages. She then dialed 911 and complained about the service in her order. Workers repeatedly instructed Jones to leave, but she allegedly refused to listen and instead carried on with her hangry meltdown. A family member also tried getting Jones to leave the restaurant. Before she walked out the door, she lifted her shirt and twerked at the employees. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said that he didn't know why Jones was so angry, but that her actions were outrageous, especially for a place where small children often visit. He described the young woman as a few fries short of a Happy Meal. Judd is notorious for his blunt and sarcastic takes on Polk County's alleged criminals. His words generated a less than pleased reaction from Jones's lawyer, Jeremy McClymont, who accused the sheriff of ridiculing his client with the Happy Meal comment. Jones was charged with burglary with assault, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, and misuse of 911. 9. Gamer accidentally swats himself. Swatting is defined as the act of making a false report to the police in order to generate a heavily armed response to someone's home. It's a crime, it's almost always done on purpose, and it's especially popular as a revenge tactic among gamers who stream their gaming activities online. But one young man from Kentucky named Elijah Sierocki managed to accidentally swat himself in early 2023 when he butt-dialed 911 while playing Rainbow Six Siege. He had no idea that an operator had picked up the phone and was listening as he talked about killing 2 people. Elijah was referencing the game rather than a real-life situation, but the dispatcher was unaware of this and naturally took the situation seriously. Needless to say, Elijah was not expecting what came next. Home surveillance footage showed the confused gamer exiting his house with his hands up at the command of police. Elijah could be heard explaining that he must have accidentally dialed 911 while playing a video game. He obeyed officers' orders as he walked out into the street with no shoes on and his hands in the air. Elijah later told Law and Crime that he pulled his phone out of his pocket to watch TikTok after he died in his video game and noticed that it had dialed 911. A few moments later, he heard his dogs barking at the front door. When he went outside, he saw that a sheriff's deputy was standing by his patrol vehicle with a rifle pointed straight at the young man. Luckily, the situation got sorted out with no serious consequences, and the police were probably happy to discover that a double homicide had not occurred as they'd originally suspected. 8. Douglas Wolaver. When the Shelby County Sheriff's Office in central Ohio received not one, but 2 silent 911 calls one evening in 2013, dispatchers traced them to a nearby residence. Law enforcement went to the address to see what was going on and caught a suspect in the middle of burglarizing the home. As it turned out, 40-year-old Douglas Wolaver had apparently butt-dialed 911, and he still hadn't realized it by the time the cops arrived at the scene. A responding officer forced open a window and followed a beeping sound, which led him to the bathroom where Wolaver was hiding. The beeping was his phone's way of alerting him to a low battery, and the device was found in his back pocket, which explained the accidental 911 call. Wolaver was charged with breaking and entering and was released from custody pending the outcome of his case. Sadly, he passed away in 2019 at the age of 46. 7. Alleged drug dealers do themselves in. A group of 4 suspected drug dealers in Gallatin, Tennessee were unaware that they'd been under surveillance by law enforcement for several weeks when they accidentally dialed 911 one evening in 2022. Investigators' jobs quickly became a lot easier thanks to the Bluetooth glitch that resulted in the accidental call at around 10 p.m. on a Friday night. The call itself didn't reveal anything telling. In fact, it was a simple hang-up call. It apparently happened when the suspects were trying to sync a Bluetooth speaker to one of their phones. When the dispatcher called back, the person who answered said that everything was fine. But the police department's policy dictates that officers must investigate each call, including those made by accident, just to be sure that their assistance isn't needed. According to police, the suspects apparently got scared that they were going to do just that. Officers reportedly saw one of the men, Lazavius King, placing 2 duffel bags into an outdoor garbage can. The police were still watching when the suspects came back outside a little while later to retrieve the duffel bags from the garbage can. Shortly thereafter, officers knocked on the door to investigate the 911 call and established that they had probable cause to search the bags based on the smell of marijuana. Inside the duffel bags, they found an array of drugs and weapons. It was enough to obtain a warrant to search the residence, during which officers found 5 pounds of marijuana, more than $18,000 in cash, ammunition, loaded magazines, and an AK-47 pistol. Authorities charged Lazavius King, Brandon Banks, Isaiah Sadler, and Jacques Wordlaw Jr. with a variety of drug and weapon-related crimes. 6. Florida man reveals murder plot. In what CBS News described as a butt-dialing blunder, a Florida man accidentally dialed 911 and was overheard talking about his plan to commit a murder in May of 2013. Unfortunately, by the time police caught on to the situation and responded just minutes later, 33-year-old Nicholas Walker had been killed. According to police, Walker was fatally shot while driving on an entrance ramp to Interstate 95. He crashed his car into a guardrail shortly before 7 o'clock in the morning. The car erupted into flames, and Walker was found inside after firefighters extinguished the blaze. Investigators put 2 and 2 together and discovered that during an accidental 911 call, 24-year-old Scott Simon had allegedly talked about how he planned to follow Walker home and kill him. Based on the information they overheard, detectives theorized that Simon was responsible for organizing the murder, but that he may not have pulled the trigger himself. According to authorities, Simon plotted the murder after getting into an argument with Walker at a local Waffle House restaurant. He was charged with first-degree murder along with 2 other suspects, 27-year-old Michael Dupree and 29-year-old Renelle Desinor. All 3 men were convicted as charged and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Investigators credited the accidental 911 call with helping them crack the case. 5. Alleged assailant versus Amazon Alexa. 28-year-old Eduardo Barros and his girlfriend were house-sitting for her parents in Tijeras, New Mexico in July 2017 when they got into an argument over a text message the woman received from another man. Barros allegedly accused his girlfriend of cheating on him and began hitting and kicking her. According to police, he also grabbed a gun and threatened to kill the woman. At one point during the altercation, Barros asked his girlfriend if she called the sheriffs or threatened to kill her if she called law enforcement, or something along those lines, not realizing that it would prompt the Amazon Echo device inside the home to dial 911. Dispatchers called the woman back on her cell phone, prompting Barros to believe that she had called the cops on him. Deputies responded to the call, and an hours-long SWAT standoff ensued before Barros was finally taken into custody. He was hit with 14 charges, including false imprisonment, aggravated battery against a household member, and possession of a firearm by a felon. While the outcome of Barros' criminal case is unclear, police credited the Amazon device with saving the woman's life. 4. Burning log display sends fire department scrambling. Over a several-week period in 2012, at least 4 frantic 911 callers in Saskatchewan, Canada, reported seeing a giant fire coming from the direction of the Mosaic Stadium in Regina. In reality, the towering flames were actually part of an image of a burning log that was being displayed on the stadium's giant TV screens. It apparently looked so realistic that some civilians thought it was real. In addition to appearing on the stadium scoreboard, the burning Yule log was featured on banner screens across the stands. The 911 callers were extremely descriptive, in some cases to the point of being imaginative, with some even claiming that they could smell smoke. Emergency responders were flooded with so many calls that they considered the shockingly realistic display to be a public safety hazard. Needless to say, the local fire department was relieved when the Sasquatch and Rough Riders agreed to change their scoreboard display. 3. Redsneaked suspect gives himself away. In August 2016, NYPD dispatchers received an incoherent 911 call from a man in Brooklyn. When they couldn't figure out what the caller was trying to say, the operator sent officers to the residence. The caller, Michael Mann, was apparently having some sort of roommate-related dispute. After explaining his situation to the cops, he asked them for a ride elsewhere. It was at that precise moment that the officers noticed Mann was wearing red sneakers, which matched the description of a man who was wanted in connection with an attack on a woman that had occurred just a day earlier. Officers searched Mann's bag and found a shirt matching the description of the attacker's clothing. They also found a knife in his back pocket that they believe had been used in the attack. Mann had previously served 17 years in prison for a similar violent attack, furthering law enforcement's suspicions against him. And, as it turned out, he was the culprit of the previous day's attack. According to the victim, Mann held a knife to her throat and brutally assaulted her. Before letting her go, he warned the woman that he knew where she lived and threatened to kill her if she called the police. She went to the cops anyway, and her testimony helped put Mann away for 50 years. He'll become eligible for parole at the age of 104, if he lives that long. 2. Astronaut calls the cops from space. During a 2019 interview about his experiences in space, Dutch astronaut André Kuipers revealed that he accidentally dialed 911 from the International Space Station while trying to reach NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. It happened sometime during the 203 days Kuipers spent at the ISS between 2004 and 2011. The 60-year-old said that it was easier to accidentally call 911 from space than one might think. In fact, the process of making an international phone call from space is similar to calling another country from a landline on Earth. As Kuiper explained, a caller had to first dial 9 to connect to an outside line, followed by 011 to connect to an international phone number. As you probably already figured out, he accidentally omitted the 0 and called the police. The misdial triggered a security alert at the NASA Center in Houston, and the next day Kuipers received an email asking if he'd dialed 911. It may seem silly, but staff members on the ground had to make sure that there were no communication system failures that might have prompted Kuipers to call 911 on purpose. In other words, if he'd been unable to reach employees at the Space Center, maybe he'd dialed emergency services instead. It makes sense when you think about it. Luckily, the misunderstanding was quickly cleared up and no harm was done. During the interview, Kuipers joked that he was a little disappointed that the police didn't respond to the call by paying a visit to the ISS. 1. Butt dialing burglars. At around 11:30 p.m. one night in 2013, 911 dispatchers in Fresno, California received a call that they quickly determined was not meant for them. In the background, the operator who took the call could hear two men discussing their plans to rob a vehicle. Realizing that the men were about to commit a crime, the operator remained on the line and continued to listen while sending a patrol car to the location of the cell phone making the call. While waiting for police to arrive, the dispatcher overheard the men discussing the items they planned to take from the car, followed by the sound of glass shattering. It wasn't long before the men could be heard trying to flee from the police. But they didn't get very far. When confronted by responding officers, 20-year-olds Carson Reinhardt and Nathan Teklemariam denied any involvement in the vehicle break-in. One of the suspects had a cut on his hand and allegedly lied about how he got the injury. But the police are smarter than they're often given credit for, and the fact that one of the men had butt dialed 911 certainly didn't help their attempts to weasel out from under accountability for their alleged crimes. In fact, the call was still in progress when an officer took the phone from one of the suspects and hung up. At that point, the dispatcher had been listening in for 35 minutes. Reinhardt and Tegla Mariam were accused of stealing medication and various other crimes, and were booked on charges of burglary, conspiracy to commit a crime, and possession of stolen property. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be overheard talking vicious smack about the police during a 911 butt dial, or for your best friend's partner to overhear you talking about how much you can't stand them and wish your friend would break up with them? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.